Keith, how you doing, man?
Dude, today is the best day of my life. How you feeling?
Bro, I'm right up there with you. You also got some sweet news stories here, so I'm excited for this. And then the topic for today, man, is huge, like big, huge. It's massive because we're talking stable coins today. And for this one, man, there's a lot of interweaving things for why this is such a big deal. And it's not just the tech itself, it's also like macroeconomics. This is one of my favorite subjects in crypto right now, that
Mhm.
it's going to impact literally every person on the planet. And not enough people know about this stuff, so I'm amped for this one.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's funny because now it's front and center, at least in the United States. When we had the stablecoin bill passed, that took us to a whole other level of everyone having to pay attention to stablecoins.
Yeah,
If you listen to a lot of people in even just tech space in general, like we've been saying that stablecoins will probably be one of the first actual use cases for crypto. And we're kind of starting to see that occur.
totally. Yeah, no, that's the thing, man. And so much to say. There's even some drama and some tea here, which is kind of a constant thing when it comes to crypto, it seems. But we'll get into the stuff. We're going to dive deep into Tether, which is USDT. It's definitely the biggest brand. I think it's the highest in terms of market cap as well, in terms of how many there are. It's the third largest crypto, which always screws with people because they see it and they're like, why is it always a dollar? So we'll help remedy that and explain that. And we'll also explain the concept of a stable coin at large. But I will let Heath start off with the news. Hit me with it, man.
Yeah, let's hit him with the news. Also want to welcome in everybody
Yeah, welcome
again.
everyone.
Keith here. What up, Keith? RD, JDM in the building. Yeah, welcome in, folks. Let's go. Awesome.
Let's get it.
So, one of the first things that I wanted to bring up is kind of we're still dealing with the aftermath of this whole crypto liquidation situation, and there were some things that I wanted to share about what has happened so far. There's quite a bit of drama around this. So, crypto.com, one of the largest crypto exchanges in the United States slash just period, their CEO actually came out and said that regulators should be looking into the exchanges that had the most liquidations in the last 24 hours, which this was on like Saturday, I think, and conduct a thorough review of fair practices. Um, so I thought this was kind of interesting. He kind of went full on and started coming at these exchanges. There's also been these rumors that there have been a ton of different how would I say, FUD. People are saying that people are paying
Yeah, I've been hearing
people
about
to
that.
spread FUD. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
if you're new to crypto, FUD means basically talking shit, like negative news.
yeah, it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt is what it stands for, and yeah, that's what it means.
Mhm.
Welcome in. We got Earthshine Code in the building. I'm not sure how to say your name
I'll
there.
try. Zio Stwog.
There we go. There we go. Code said they're here for the drama. Well, we are excited to have you here because I think that's a lot of what we're going to go into today.
Totally.
Um, Next news story, and this one is hilarious. We've got a scheduled upgrade for Coinbase going live on October 25th at 7 PT. So it's estimated to last around 4 hours. So this is really funny because, like, when this happens, first off, of course, it happens right after we have the largest liquidation in crypto history, right? So just bad timing by Coinbase. Maybe they should have scheduled this a little bit further out. But immediately I get texts in the group chat like, "Uh-oh, guys, like crypto's about to explode up higher so that nobody can buy it," or it's about to tank and no one's going to be able to do anything about it during this time. But just like a common uh, thing where we talk about Coinbase and how they always go down during these big, massive movements in the market, and it's obviously the worst time to have those outages. But coming up on
Always.
October 25th, so be prepared.
So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, that's definitely horrendous timing, but that's the way it goes with this kind of stuff. There's always something going on, so it's difficult to avoid. What up to Sam? Sam's in the building. We appreciate having you here. What else we got for news?
Let's see. Were you guys did that even pull up? Well, now it's there. Anyways, next we have this really awesome thing that happened yesterday with Paxos. So Paxos is essentially a provider of stable coins, and even for instance, they have Pax G. They have the gold version of a stable coin, which is very unique. They're pretty much the only ones that really do this at scale, and so they take custody of these assets and then they represent them digitally on chain. Yesterday, Paxos, who is also responsible for PYUSD, which is the PayPal stablecoin, they mistakenly minted excess PayPal USD as part of an internal transfer. So Paxos immediately identified the error and then burned the excess PYUSD. So this was just an internal technical error, no security breach, customer funds are safe, and they addressed the root cause. Now, when it comes to this like little mistake that they made, I want to be clear on what they did. So I think what happened was that they accidentally burned 300 million PYUSD, and then they were like, "Oh, we need to like patch it back up." And then they minted 300 trillion PYUSD after that.
How's that even possible?
So and this is kind of what we'll look at some of the comments here as well to talk about this, because like the thing is like these stablecoin providers are um they are custodial platforms, and so they can just mint and burn tokens as they please.
Mm,
And with that, like obviously they should have some sorts of extra security stuff in place around this, but I think somehow here they didn't. And it's a real problem because yeah, you can actually mint stable coins that aren't necessarily backed by anything. So the question was, and I think someone commented this. Well, first off, he said maybe he said, "Give me 30K. You know, that's all I need. That's all I need." Um, let's see. There was one other one that I thought was really good. So
none.
basically, the major thing here is just like the internal technical error, print $1 trillion. Like, what if someone took this money and like bought Bitcoin with it? Then what? You know what I mean? So,
Mm,
um, those are some of the things that I think we're actually going to dive a lot deeper into today, because some people believe that when it comes to Tether, that is exactly what they do. So, speaking on that, let's move on to the next news story. Jacob
yeah.
King, everyone, he's actually pretty much famous for hating on Tether and Bitcoin as well. Um, but we'll dive into what he said here yesterday, because I did do some back checking on this. And there's this company called Riverstone Consultancy that actually filed a lawsuit against Tether, alleging a $44 million freeze after an informal request from Bulgarian law enforcement. So the complaint accuses Tether of violating international legal protocols by freezing assets based on a local police report, which is pretty wild to think about. If your
That's
local
insane.
police can just like say, yeah, yeah, freeze these assets and get away with that. And then failing to deliver due process and earning interest on frozen reserves, allegedly enriching itself unjustly. Interesting. So I don't really know a whole lot about this case, but there's just a ton of drama around Tether, and I wanted to highlight this here because this also kind of highlights, like they're saying right here, the massive centralization risks that come with these custodial stablecoins, where they can just freeze and seize your assets as they please, and even just based upon what a local police uh, enforcement may want to do. So that's the news there. One other thing.
That's all. Actually, I want to talk about this for another episode, and I don't know how much you can go into it now without warning. But like, how do they govern the seizure of assets, like for crypto? Because what if it's on like your own like your own wallet or whatever? Like, how do they deem what they can and can't take?
Yeah, so when it comes to Tether or any of these custodial stable coins, like they are the issuer of the asset, like from the actual blockchain itself, essentially. Like, so they can burn your assets no matter where they sit, right? Or freeze them no matter where they sit. Um, just because of the fact that like they're the issuer of the actual token.
Mm,
So yeah, I'm sure there's like more complex details to the technicalities of that, but because they are a centralized issuer of the token, like when they issue the token, it also comes with smart contracts that say, "Oh, by the way, I have the ability to do these other things too."
got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, last thing I wanted to share, because I thought this was, I mean, it's honestly funny, but it's sad because we've got this guy here on Instagram, excuse me, on Twitter. He said Crypto.com CEO has filed a lawsuit against Binance following the $400 billion of liquidations. Now, I just wanted to bring this up to everyone because this is fake. Okay. And like, if you're not super aware, it might not be obvious that this is fake, but it is. And someone called it out in the comments that also this is probably actually AI generated, right? So,
For
um,
sure.
just keep an eye out for stuff like this, guys. Like, there's a tons of accounts like this. Like, this guy probably has like crazy amounts of followers. Yeah, see, he has 149,000 followers, guys. So
That
you can't
that's
use that. as a way to judge the veracity of anything anymore.
That's another reason why we made this show, is because I always would tell people, "Go get educated," but it is a minefield out there, especially in crypto. Like, people just make shit up all the time, and even sometimes the biggest news outlets make shit up because their whole
Facts.
business is clicks, right? And so in this world, like, Charles Hoskinson's had a big, like, beef with a lot of these news places because they'll just make shit up that totally tarnishes his reputation, Cardano's reputation, and that's why we're definitely gonna have to have some new social media platforms here in the near future. That probably decentralization is really a big part of it. And I sent you that video yesterday, Keith, or 2 days ago, where Charles was basically saying there will be the technology where people who are bad actors can actually get penalized for that. And that's
Hmm.
something I'm super excited for, because that's something that would totally make social media so much more fun and valuable and less scary, because there's so many opportunities for people to get screwed. And that's why they just don't touch this stuff.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I definitely recommend people go and check out that interview or that, excuse me, that discussion with Charles Hoskinson. I guess really just follow him. Like just follow
Yes.
Charles Hoskinson.
Seriously. And honestly, I'm trying to manifest it, but we're gonna get him on this show, and I'm gonna get him as a client, because it's amazing what he shares on his YouTube channel, and he gets a decent amount of views, but like not relative to the information that he's sharing in terms of its importance. It's not even close because he doesn't understand the YouTube game, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like he probably just doesn't care, and it's not good for like the
For Cardano.
potential. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Um, I just want to share one more thing on like this, like fake news kind of thing, because a few weeks ago, I think someone sent this in the group chat. It was like breaking: NATO has declared war against Russia,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
comma.
saw that. I saw that. Yeah, yeah. Please, yeah, continue. Sorry, I got super excited.
So it said breaking: NATO has declared war against Russia, comma, claims Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Nevrov. So it's like, guys, like we got to be super. And this is like a very big news outlet that has almost 1 million followers on Twitter.
They did
So
it
it's
on
like,
purpose.
yeah, 100%. Like their whole business, like you said, is getting clicks, getting attention, and so you have to be careful when you're looking at this stuff online. These
Totally.
types of accounts right here, like there are thousands, probably tens of thousands of them that have a lot of followers,
Mhm.
and sometimes people don't know. I think a lot of people also get the joke, so it's like a joke, but you don't know if you don't know. So,
Yes.
anyways,
And that makes it really hard to get new people into the space, which sucks so bad. So I definitely be wary of anybody, even the news outlets that cover this. I assume things are false before I assume they're true. And 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 what else was I gonna say was also avoid individual people who are like really obsessed with one project and telling you to buy it. Like, if they're claiming something is gonna go up, like, definitely be very skeptical of that. There's so many shills on Twitter. But it's two more comments here. So JDM says, "I love Charles, but he scares me when he talks sometimes." I would love to know what you mean by that. Like, does he scare you about the subject matter, his delivery? What scares you? And then Jamin says, "So
Jamin.
real." Jamin, how are you, man?
Yeah, Jamin.
Cool.
Awesome. And then Code had said AI generated content is getting so realistic, it's often hard to tell what's real anymore. We've got to be extra careful and do our own research before believing anything we see online. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. And like the first thing that I would have done if I didn't kind of quickly notice that this was way too crispy and like
That precise, like, it looks like an ad.
exactly way too crispy, and I know that this isn't what those documents look like a little
Mhm.
bit more, raw than that. And so if I hadn't noticed that, I would have looked up this court case, right, and looked for it and matched up with the Southern District of New York and seen if that case actually existed, right,
Yeah.
and we would have quickly seen that it doesn't.
Yeah, please start doing that stuff. I know it's boring and it's extra work, but that stuff can save you from getting duped, and this stuff just happens so often that it's something you gotta be prepared for if you're gonna enter the space, but you also don't want it to be the reason you don't get educated, because there's so much opportunity.
100%, man. I'm gonna move on to the meme for the day, which this one is not even really all that funny. It actually, to me, just feels real. And I'm gonna post a video later today that talk more about how I feel on this. But
Okay.
um, Lux Algo, he said, Trump, the U.S. is in a trade war with China, and then this is him fighting on the front lines.
It's
And
true.
I honestly think that there's some validity to this. Like, we're seeing potentially economic warfare and financial warfare playing out through the infrastructure of these assets and
Totally.
across the world. And this isn't a new thing. Everyone always asks, "What are my favorite books?" We'll talk. I'll do another video on that soon too. But Currency Wars by Jim Rickards, guys, is an incredible read. And James Rickards is this guy who spent time in the Pentagon actually creating war scenarios for for economic warfare back in like 2012. Okay, so there have been people, right, whose their entire job has been to consult with the Department of Defense in the United States to come up with different ways that countries around the world could actually
Mm,
enforce economic warfare against the United States, and what would that actually look like? That's as early as 2012. There's no telling how long. I'm sure that's been going on for much longer than that,
ever.
right?
Mhm,
So,
totally.
anyways,
Yeah,
just
and
wanted to share
that's
that.
I love that. Yeah, definitely always bring the memes forward, and it's not even a meme. You're right. There's a lot of validity to that. When value is perception, then these games can be played everywhere and anywhere, especially as we're all online. So that makes total sense to me. And I will say that Twitter is one of the best places for memes because it moves so fast that humor is definitely rewarded there. So you do see some hilarious stuff, but definitely approach everything with a strong degree of skepticism.
100%, 100%. Wanted to catch up on some of the comments real quick. Charles gives me wholesome dad vibes, actually. I think that's right on. I think that's
Yeah.
right on. Charles reminds me of the original Jurassic Park guy who had good intentions bringing back dinosaurs, but then Jurassic Park happened.
That's not I feel like that's not even crazy because he actually has partnered with the company that's trying to bring back the woolly mammoth and stuff. He actually recently they created and fact check this, but they created glow in the dark plants. Like they're basically messing around with genetic engineering to create different things. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think he's just so smart on so many things that it's hard to grasp what he's saying. And always when we don't understand, we typically default towards scare, like being scared or having skepticism. So I think that's totally fair that you have that belief system. But I think the more that you were to watch on him, the less and less you'd be afraid. Is my 2 cents. But that's up to you.
Yeah, when I was watching the thing about the AI and how the future of all of that stuff would look, I did think to myself, I'm like, he clearly has great intentions and he's putting in the work and has been, but I wonder like how easy it's going to be. And I've been listening to a lot of stuff from him actually. So thanks to you, Ben, you've been like flooding my inbox with Charles Hoskinson. Um, but it's like there's still so many ways to get this stuff wrong. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I'll just put that out there.
I also think that, and I can't wait to have him on here to discuss this stuff with him directly and ask him the questions because he always has really good answers. But I think he has a lot more trust in the systems and the people governing them than I do. Like, yeah, if people like you were calling the shots, Charles, I don't think I'd be that worried. But the people calling the shots are worried about their friends and themselves and their income, right? So yeah, I think in theory, if I could just give him the keys, I would be happy with where the car ended up. But I think he's going to have to go through way more of an obstacle course than I think he maybe he realizes, but then he's hoping for. I don't know.
Right, right. 100%. Should we break down this the main topic for today?
Let's get it, dude.
Cool, man. So, one of the major stable coins out there, the biggest stable coin and has always pretty much been the biggest stable coin is Tether. And there's a lot of controversy around this thing. And there's a lot of economic, especially in the crypto world, power that this stablecoin really has. One thing that's important to understand about Tether is that it is a category of stablecoins that is also a custodial stablecoin. So there are several different types of stablecoins out there. Some of them are algorithmic, meaning that they are pegged to whatever it is pegged to by code, right? But in this case, this one is not. And even when it's pegged to even if a stablecoin is pegged to $1, for instance, by code or by some sorts of transactions that are happening in the background to maintain that peg, as we saw last week with
Yeah.
USDE, they can still lose their peg. um, and the reason that this can happen, and this can happen for a custodial stablecoin as well, is because of the imbalances that happen in the marketplace. So if people all of a sudden want to get out of the stablecoin because there's a scare that it's not redeemable or whatever it may be, people might sell that stablecoin in a way that creates an imbalance or where they'll be willing to take even less
Mm,
of that number because they're like, oh, well, what if this isn't backed by anything? Well, so I'll take 50 cents on the dollar right now, you know?
got
Um,
it.
so that's how you can get those imbalances in the prices of stablecoins is from market volatility.
Yeah. No, that's scary because the whole utility of a stable coin is to basically there's a lot of utility that I'm sure we'll dive deeper into it, but for people in North America, it's hard to grasp that you wouldn't have access to a fairly stable currency because most of our living experience has, if you've been in the first world or at least the Western world, is it's no big deal that you can go get dollars, right? In Canada or America, I can even go get US dollars from my local bank. It's no problem. And I can use that anywhere. It's accepted anywhere. But if you're in these many countries that have had economic sanctions against them and their economy has been destroyed because of leaders making poor decisions economically, like these people are in very bad situations and they can't get access to stable currency. So like, there's value in say you're even a trader or someone here where you want to take some risk off the table, but you don't want to take it out of crypto, so you put it into stable coins. That's one big use case. But
Mhm.
abroad, it's actually really important just to give people access to money. And then I'm sure
Yep.
we'll dive deeper into why this also benefits the U.S. government quite a bit. But I'll let
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
continue on with where you were going.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that you just pointed out is really important. Like the original use case for Tether, which the first stablecoin, was to get in and out of crypto in a way that allowed you to stay on the exchanges, right? So Tether actually began in 2014 under the name Real Coin, and then it rebranded to Tether a little bit later, which
Real coin's
that
a
is
horrible
ironic.
name, bro.
That is ironic. Yeah, it's the real coin. Um, but so some of the founding team members, and this is actually super interesting, are Brock Pierce, Reeve Collins, and Craig Sellers. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about this because I wasn't there during this time, but I do know that Brock Pierce has kind of carved out a pretty significant name for himself in that he ended up running for president in like 2016 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's an interesting character. I don't know a whole lot about the platform. I think he's kind of like a libertarian guy and did all that, but he was actually a part of the founding team of Tether. So the things that we want to understand about Tether, because we're going to get deep into the conspiracies today, is that Tether is actually controlled by Tether Limited is controlled by a company called Tether Holdings. And that company, I believe, is registered in the British Virgin Islands. And this is originally how it went. And essentially, there's an owner of this company that's called Bitfinex. And Bitfinex is called, excuse me, is an exchange, one of the OG crypto exchanges. And so throughout time, what has happened here is people have been essentially questioning whether or not this Bitfinex company is super closely tied to Tether. And initially, they kept on saying that they were not tied.
Mm,
And eventually, we had this leak of documents that happened later down the line that kind of showed that they kind of were. And anyways, Tether as a custodial stablecoin in general is one of those things that like creates a lot of risk for the system because once again, as we talked about earlier, they can kind of mint and burn tokens as they please. And with that, we don't really know whether or not they have any assets that back this token as it comes out. And so over time, the biggest issue has been, well, first off, who actually owns this company? If it's an exchange, couldn't that be a little bit convoluted where like the exchange could then mint these tokens and then they could be used to buy stuff without anyone really knowing the inner workings of all of that? And um, that's kind of been one of the major issues with Tether is like, where is it really coming from? Who owns it? And when they mint it, um, is it being backed by any other assets? And we've seen very recently Tether have to pivot where they released like Tether US right after the Stablecoin Act, the Genius Act was passed. And that definitely has a lot to do with the fact that we don't have a lot of transparency into Tether. It's not based in the United States. They also, so therefore, are not necessarily susceptible to US banking laws. And because of that, if they didn't move to kind of bring themselves to have at least an entity here, and maybe they have some entity here, but if they don't have their headquarters in that whole system here, then they were probably not going to be allowed to operate in the US.
got it. I thought there was a necessary backing to a true US dollar to issue the stable coin. Am I wrong in that?
Not necessarily. From what I understand, like it's all digitally minted. So they can mint the tokens as they please. And for now, this is why the Genius Act was such a big deal because like this whole time, like we don't know what these
That's
stablecoin
crazy.
providers have. Yeah, like it literally could be anything. What they do is they do attestations. Now, the problem with these attestations from Tether is that they've always been done like internally. Like they don't really have a third party full audit that they do to attest to the assets that they hold in their balance sheet. They put out what they hold, but there's no third party full audit. So
Mm.
that's kind of what the Genius Act has said is like, hey guys, you can't really just do that.
Yeah, and there's this comment from Sam, "Let's talk about it. Why is this so difficult to find out? Why have they been able to operate here?" Yeah, that's the question that I would go to is how, like, again, there's so many things I'm not privy to, but that sounds insane. Like, I thought they had to be back to I thought they had to be back to short-term treasuries. They don't have to be back to anything?
Not until now, right? Not
Okay,
until that Genius Act got passed, and that was the ruling around it. So another thing that has happened with stablecoins in the past is they've been backed by potential by volatile assets, which I can only laugh when I say that out loud because someone thought that that was a good idea, and in 2021, I believe, with the Do Kwon Terra Luna incident, it proved that that wasn't such a great idea to back a stable asset with something that's volatile.
who'd
Who
have
would have
thunk
thought?
it? Yeah,
um, so, anyways, but Tether, for instance, does actually hold a certain amount of Bitcoin on their balance sheet as well. But I'm pretty sure the way that they do it is that they over collateralize the dollars with treasuries, and then also hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and that actually just kind of provides just more returns for the company overall for their treasury.
got it. Okay, and so where do you think makes sense to dive to next? Do you wanna go to the like, dive deeper into the utility, or what do you think?
Um, I kind of just want to jump to these conspiracies, man. What do you think?
Okay, ask and you shall receive. I'm a big conspiracy guy, so let's get into it.
All right. So um, one of the things that happened here along the journey of Tether existing was and I just learned about this last night, was this thing called the Paradise Papers. Okay. So in 2017, there was a leak of 13.4 million financial documents that revealed the offshore financial dealings of wealthy and powerful people, including politicians, corporations, and celebrities. So this leak was actually obtained by a German newspaper and was investigated by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And this exposed how individuals and key companies use tax havens to avoid taxes, hide assets, and obscure their finances. And now there was a lot of stuff that came out of this, like Queen Elizabeth II had some stuff that came out. There was tax engineering by Apple and Nike and other secretive deals that were including all these different types of companies. And in these papers, there was also some key information about Tether that was leaked. So, one of the things that was leaked from that was this overlapping ownership structure that we hinted at a little bit earlier, where we found out that the Bitfinex executives were also beneficial owners and founding directors of Tether, despite years of both companies publicly denying a direct relationship. So obviously that contradicted the previous claims that they were two separate entities, which makes a really big difference because you're talking about a stablecoin and an exchange. And if you have a stablecoin and an exchange under the same house, then you can do a lot of funny business in the markets.
Oh, yeah.
So the other big thing that came out of this was these offshore incorporations. So these documents showed that Tether was set up in the British Virgin Islands by the same individuals running Bitfinex, and these arrangements were previously undisclosed to the public, even though there were plenty of people that were like asking about this stuff. So once these papers came out, there was a lawsuit. So the ownership revelations formed the basis of a major U.S. lawsuit, which alleged that Tether and Bitfinex manipulated the crypto market to benefit themselves, and that Tether's claims of being fully backed by U.S. dollars were false. That suit claimed that Tether issued unbacked stablecoins to inflate the prices on Bitfinex and misrepresented its reserves. So this was like a huge thing, and I remember seeing like some emails. I wish I could find them, but I did not find them for this episode. But there's like these emails of people going back and forth talking about how essentially they were like propping up the price of Bitcoin, and like it was wild. You could see like these emails of them saying like, "We need to mint like this much of it now." to make sure that it doesn't crash or something crazy like that. And these are like emails from Bitfinex. So I couldn't find them today, but we'll find them at some point. And I'm sure some of you guys probably have even seen some of these documents yourselves.
The guy that you shared earlier in this, he talks about that a lot, doesn't he, in terms of that Tether pulls this stuff? And could
Mhm.
you explain to someone and myself too, in terms of how would they effectively achieve that? Like, how could they prop up Bitcoin through these practices?
Yeah, so essentially, like if we have no visibility into whether or not there are actual dollars that are backing the stablecoin, then we get these huge moments over and over again. We see this every day almost, where Tether mints like 400 million Tether. And so with that, like, okay, where did the $400 million come from?
Mm.
And if it came from nowhere, then that $400 million worth of Tether could technically be used to go out and purchase Bitcoin in the real world. And in that scenario, you've provided this support and demand for Bitcoin that may not actually exist outside of this Tether ecosystem that they've just created out of thin air. So that's kind of all it would have to be.
So how would that even collapse? Because like, what would be the impact? Like, how would that even get to a point where we could prove that, one, and then two, where it would have a very negative impact to bring it back down? Like, it sounds like a scam that would be pretty, if it was like that, it sounds like it'd be pretty hard to prove.
Well, I mean, those emails were pretty
Pretty damning.
convincing.
Okay.
um, but but I think you're right though, as far as like the actual digital forensics around it. I'm sure it could be done. I'm sure it
Yeah, yeah,
has
yeah.
been done, even honestly. But and I think that's one of the things too about this. It's just so weird that like the largest stablecoin in the world that has been there this entire time has this whole conspiracy that just lingers over it, like the entire
Mhm.
time, basically, and yet it just continues to go on until the Genius Act got passed. That changed a lot of things right there.
So what changed with the Genius Act? Let's outline that
Mhm.
for everyone because that's a big, big deal. The legislation that's getting pushed right now in the States is really shaping the future of this industry, and it's why everyone should be paying attention because the fact that this stuff has even gotten to this point when there was no security, no rules in place, tells you that it can explode very quickly if things go the way that I think they can, because there's rules, right? And so do you mind explaining that?
Yeah. So just like any other sort of money market kind of company, like you usually have to report to um, the people that are investing in your offering that you're holding the assets that you're saying you're holding.
Mm,
Um, and so in this case, we have Tether, which is essentially like you can think of them as a bank in a way. Um, they're now any stablecoin provider in the United States now has to uh, actually fully disclose what is backing their assets and the actual process for what that's going to look like. I actually don't know 100%, but I know that in the Stablecoin Act, they have said, hey, you have to back your assets one to one with short term US treasuries or cash equivalents, right? And so that goes also into our thing that you were just saying, Ben, about how, well, what does this mean for the United States and why is this so beneficial to the US? And there it goes. So now we have these digital assets that can be purchased by anyone, anywhere in the world that now must be backed if they're issued in the United States. They must be backed one to one by US dollars. And so this basically sets the standard, or excuse me, backed one to one by US treasuries, by short term US treasuries. And so this essentially sets a global standard for what all stablecoins that are representing dollars must do. They all must buy short-term U.S. Treasuries in order to be allowed to operate in the U.S.
got it.
So, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a massive deal for a bunch of reasons that we can dive a little bit deeper into. So, everybody, there's a reason why when you have a $20 bill, you can go basically anywhere in the world with an American 20 or $100 bill, and people will take it for the value that it's worth, like at its home country. That's not a thing with like any other currency. It's just not. And so, if you can essentially give that to people in a way where they don't need the physical bill, that's a huge win for America to maintain this stranglehold over fiat currency that they've had for a very long time, which is huge. And also, if in the global trade scene, America's really been able to do a lot of the things that they've done over the years because there was such a massive demand for their dollars. And so that's started to go down, as Keith's mentioned in previous episodes, as people are less and less confident that America can maintain what it's done and pay back its debts. And so, with that, this basically creates a massive amount of demand for the US dollar, which can help alleviate some of the problems that the States has with their crazy amount of debt and that decreased demand. It was kind of like worse to a bad to a worse situation that this can come in and kind of act as like a bit of a save the day kind of thing. So that's a big thing to understand.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down a little bit because that's the big thing here is on a global stage, US treasuries and US dollar is kind of phasing out of demand. You have like the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa that are saying, yo, we're not really cool with you guys having the dominant currency and like bullying us with that. So we're gonna find ways to move around this. And Russia has been probably the most vocal about this, and they have also even very specifically come out and said, well, the BRICS nations have come together to come out and say, we're going to use a cryptocurrency-like instrument to circumvent the US dollar. So that, by the way, has been on record since like 2017 or something. I think they first started saying that. And so it's kind of we're moving into a world where countries are looking to find a way to get off the US dollar. And to go back to Currency Wars by Jim Rickards, 2012, this was already a discussion. Like this is what that book is about, is that what would these governments do to be able to wean off of the United States dollar? And what would that look like? What impact would that have on financial markets? What impact would that have on geopolitics? And what would we do as a reaction to that? In that book, the main scenario that they go over is having a gold backed currency, right? As the way to circumvent the US dollar. And if we've been paying any attention, not only to the price of gold, that actually came after we've had over the past few years, these governments all around the world absolutely hoarding gold. Uh, really, really going hard on buying as much gold as possible. And so, with that, we've definitely started to move into the place where, if that is what these countries want to do, move to a gold standard, there's a good chance that they would probably be in position to do that right about now. And the price of gold is obviously
It's
soaring to
crazy.
all-time highs, as we said.
Yeah, gold's been going mental. We've mentioned that a few times throughout different episodes, but for the understanding for people who are here, of course, they know America is the big scary country, big military, etc. But there's underlying things that were set deliberately to maintain that status of large demand. One of the things that I believe is the fact that um, oil was pegged in dollars, right? So to buy oil on the global scene, you needed US dollars to conduct that. Is that correct?
Correct, correct. The
So
petrodollar was a big thing that came into effect after we depegged from gold.
got it. And so then that's what the last time period has been. And so now it's probably going to lead to some radical change in terms of what this is back to now. But a lot of countries are saying that the crypto is going to be essentially the thing that allows America to maintain that status. And you actually made a video very recently on this that did very, very well. Where wasn't it the Russian somebody from Russia, right? Who they
Mhm,
said
mhm.
that America, and he was freaking out too. He's like, America is about to use crypto to wipe out all of their debt. Can you explain a little bit more of the specifics of what they're alleging and stuff?
Yeah, so we don't know exactly how, right? But the Russian finance minister or something like that, he came out and said that the US is trying to wipe out its debt using cryptocurrency. And so or gold. Uh, and so with that, I kind of just did a little bit of a like video kind of outlining some scenarios of what that could potentially look like. And one of the things that has been clear is that, let me say this, Judy Shelton was a former economic advisor to the current president of the United States. And during that time, 2016 to 2020 era, she actually uh, was appointed to become the chairman of the Fed. And before then, and ever since then as well, she's written, I believe, at least one book, maybe multiple books, about the need for the world to go back to a gold standard. And in this, she's also had an interview where she came out and said that this was like 2016 or something crazy. She was like, I see the world moving towards a gold standard in a new cryptocurrency kind of way. And these are the exact words that kind of came out of her mouth now,
Wow.
not verbatim, but basically. And so I just think that a big part of this is definitely going to involve some sort of digital currency. Now, whether it's like the digital currencies that you and I are used to, whether they are these permissionless networks that anyone can kind of use, I don't think it necessarily has to look like that. But I also go over different types of solutions that exist where you might be able to actually issue currencies on a particular blockchain that are essentially being represented, where you have other assets that are also being represented on that chain. I'm just going to go ahead and say it for my people in the back. the XRP ledger,
I knew it
right,
was
being a
coming.
place where you can actually issue whatever asset you want and tokenize whatever asset you want. And when you go there, then now you can have one other currency that exists on this chain that's backed by these other assets that are issued on that chain. Now you can do this on any different, on many different types um, of blockchains, but the XRP ledger is designed for that. So, anyways, I'll step back for a second. I forgot how we got off the rails.
No, no, you're good. So, do you think we should dive any deeper into Tether? Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or should we open it up to stable coins in general?
I think we can. The last thing that I wanted to say on Tether was that we did have right after the stablecoin, excuse me, the Genius Act was passed. Tether announced the USAT stablecoin for America. Right.
Yes, yes, yes. Can you explain what that is, the differences between the 2?
So, so I'm just going to read what I'm seeing here. Tether is launching a new U.S. regulated dollar-backed stablecoin called USAT to serve the American market, which is distinct from its existing global USDT coin. The new coin is designed for U.S. residents and institutions, will be subject to U.S. regulations like the Genius Act, and aims to provide greater transparency and institutional access. Oh, and by the way, wow, I'm tripping. This is going to be led by Bo Hines, who was formerly the director of the cryptocurrency task force in the United
Mm,
States. So I didn't even notice that, but that's a big part of this too.
that's massive.
So, anyways,
Okay. Yeah, no, is that the last piece on Tether?
yeah, and it's just funny because it's like the only when I saw that I was like, oh, so Tether's not following these rules.
Right now, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, we can move
Totally.
on.
Yeah, no, the largest stable coin on the planet is not following these rules. That's a little bit, concerning, I'd say, at the very least. And so then if we wanna open it up to stable coins at large more now, what's stopping the major banks from coming in and issuing their own stable coins and just doing this whole thing, with behind their brand name? Like, why couldn't that be a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely moving into a world where we will see more stable coins. I think another thing that's funny about the banks is like we really wouldn't have to know as much if they were using stable coins. Like I think there's a way that like stable coins could be being used without anyone ever knowing that inside of the banking system. And they would just have more efficient cross-border payments and like, as the end user, oh, I got my money faster, kind of like
Yeah, yeah,
Zelle.
yeah.
Like no one has to know how
It's
Zelle
done.
works. It's there. Okay, cool. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, we are seeing banks start to say out loud that, oh, we're going to start launching our stablecoin, this and that. Now, I think we brought up in one of the past episodes of like whether or not these stablecoins will actually be white labeled or not, because I do think that that would be a more like realistic path rather than setting up the infrastructure to create a stablecoin, which it's not that big of a deal. They are already banks, so they probably have most of that together.
Yeah,
But I do think when it comes to the tech, probably better off to not do that
to white
and
label it,
have the BitGos and the Coinbase custodies of the world kind of be responsible
deal
for
with it.
that.
Yeah, and Tom Lee has been the voice behind pushing the narrative that Ethereum is the stablecoin blockchain, and so he's really pushing to make that happen because if you get tied to someone's bank, there's definitely a strong degree of trust there and also a ton of money. And then so Zeos2G had a good post here. Yeah, you already got it. Awesome. The government could mint itself out of debt? Question mark. That's a really good question, and it kind of does sound like that. But how I see it and how I understand what Keith's saying is it wouldn't be minting their way out of debt. It'd more so be repegging how the whole game is played to basically change how their current situation actually is in terms of how the new system is run.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be like a little bit of a reworking of the financial system, and it kind of goes into the next question that RD has asked. But we can also talk about Ryan too, if you want to touch on that.
We'll come back to Caspa at the end.
Okay.
Let's keep it relevant to here. So RD's question is this: can you explain the difference between stablecoins and CBDCs? This is big.
Yeah. So CBDCs are essentially going to be the idea of a CBDC is that it is a direct liability of the central bank of whatever country it is that we're talking about. So with that, what it means is that when you are essentially going to use money in your country, right? The physical currency that we have today is a direct liability of the Fed. Now, the thing about a CBDC is that you would basically be taking these dollars and tokenizing them and making them digital. And with that, you might not really have the need for the physical dollar as much. That's one thing to think about. Uh, but the second thing is that now you have a digital version of that, and that, right, the way that the system works today, to be clear, right, is you have an intermediation. So the central bank, yes, they create money, but they give that money to the banks, then give that money to the people. But with the CBDC, you have a potential for that actually going direct to the consumer. So in 2020, in the United States, we had Maxine Waters publish a bill right in the middle of this crisis. This was wild. It just came out and went away. She published this idea of there being Fed accounts. It was crazy, by the way. Like, this was just randomly in this, like, thousands and thousands of pages of legislation during the COVID times, the 2020 times. And there was just this Fed accounts and digital dollars in there. And people were like, wait, what? Like, where did this come from? This isn't a thing. But
Mhm.
anyways, I don't think that legislation got passed. But the idea being that you would have an account that you could set up with the Federal Reserve itself, and that would be where you get access to dollars. And essentially being able to use that as your banking service rather than the actual commercial banks. Now, there are ways to have a CBDC that is intermediated, right? And this is what the solutions like Stellar Lumens and like Ripple XRP are trying to create, is to have some intermediation between, right, where that actually takes place, so that the banks actually are responsible for managing the CBDCs, and then they take that and then they issue their own currencies based upon the CBDCs that are private money, like these stablecoins.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the major difference. The CBDC is a direct liability of the Fed. The stablecoin is a direct liability of a private company.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense to me. If you need any further clarification, Artie, please just let us know. But I do think that stablecoins are going to become a far bigger thing in the very near future for all the things that we've mentioned. And I also think that Trump's been talking about how he would give what was the terminology that the money that he gave to people during COVID. What were those called again?
I'm sorry, say that again.
When Trump just gave people money during
Oh, the
COVID.
stimulus checks.
Yeah, stimulus checks. And so I would not be shocked at all if he gives some sort of small amount of stimulus through the vehicle of a stable coin to basically usher in adoption of that, right? There's a lot of people who won't go learn something, but if they know that there's a guaranteed 500 bucks on the other end of it, suddenly they'll learn it, right? It happens all the time. It's actually the same marketing move that Hoskinson's using with Midnight. It's the exact same thing. I would not be shocked at all if in the near future, especially when it's coming for important milestones for Trump's continuation of getting more power and everything, I do think that he'll probably announce some free money in the form of a stablecoin. I would not be shocked to see that happen.
Yeah. And then so the major concern for the CBDC, by the way, is like, if the Fed has complete control over the money system in a digital format, then we could potentially move into a world where um, our transactions are all traced, for one, and then also potentially controllable. Like the same concerns that we have with Tether around, like, oh, they can just freeze and seize assets whenever they want. Well, if you gave that directly to the government, well, they could do a whole lot more than just seize and freeze. They could put time limits on the money. They could encourage certain types of spending and discourage other types of spending. And quite frankly, like, the technology that I'm seeing built out is kind of designed to create that kind of a world.
Exact situation.
um, so imagine having a world where the money supply, right, and interest rates are set algorithmically by economic activity, right? So if we're seeing that people are not spending money, and we want to encourage spending because they're afraid of the economy or whatever, then we'll put a time limit on all of their money. So they have to spend it. And if they have to spend it, then now we get more money flowing into the economy. And so the velocity of money, right, goes back up. So velocity of money, interest rates, and all of that could be and prices even, right? And taxes even could be algorithmically set and uh, and implemented in real time. And just imagine a world like that.
Yeah, that's definitely where people go to where they get the most afraid because the technology is there. But there's also the argument where, again, I don't believe in almost anything governments say that is in the best interest of their people, even when they say that it is. But if the people were there building the rules actually did understand everything, much like Charles said in the talk that we talked about, like there is the technology to do it right. It's just trusting that they will, and you can't go back if they don't. Like that's the scariest part in all of this. This is why it's so important for people to get really educated so they actually know what's being discussed in these bills that are getting passed and the legislation that's coming into place because so many people they just see it and they're like, oh, it's crypto bill. Like it's really important that you understand what all of these terms mean so that when they try to throw stuff in there, you actually know what they're saying. Um, do you want to show some of these comments and address a bit?
Yeah. So would US then only use CBDC to peg to dollar to pay down debt? RD, I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah, I don't fully I think what they're saying is that would they just print the money to solve their problem in terms of, like, just creating that money and then paying the debt?
Oh,
If they did that, I think that would cause too much of a that would defeat the purpose,
yeah.
so that wouldn't work, but I think they're going to use some creative changing of systems and instruments to basically repeg
Yes.
what their debt's worth. Go ahead.
So this is the part where I think it gets fun because the only way for the US to be able to create a way to pay down its debt is for there to be, in my eyes, this is how I look at it. There has to be some volatile asset. It can't be a stable coin or a CBDC. There needs to be something that's volatile that creates the ability to actually create the wealth or the money that they need to then pay off the debt, or
Mm,
however they want to rebalance the debt or whatever. And so, this is where once again we go back to like, oh, okay, we need a volatile asset. People are asked all the time, like, well, what makes XRP any different than a stable coin? What makes it any better than a stable coin? Why wouldn't you just use a stable coin? Because XRP is not solving that problem. The problem that it's solving is a political problem. It is this debt issue that it's trying to solve. And so, anyways, that stuff I save a little bit more for my close friends. But at the end of the day, you need some sort of a volatile asset, like a even if it was just Bitcoin. Like you need Bitcoin. The government has kind of said that we're going to acquire and potentially hold Bitcoin. So in that case, right, if Bitcoin goes up to some crazy amount of money and that's on their balance sheet, now they have a much lower debt to asset ratio. Uh, anyway,
Keith, are we not your close friends?
you guys are my like acquaintances. No, I'm just kidding.
'Cause, we should be getting all the best stuff here, so I'm just
I get.
saying, but
I pretty much just took it all the way. I think the only thing that I hold back is my level of conviction on what it is that's actually happening, and that's
got it.
just to
Yeah,
scare
let
away
people
the
totally, I'm totally trolling you, but let people
haters.
come to their own conclusions, but we've got some, didn't Trump say no CBDC, in US? I think he said that publicly, but, um,
And
saying one thing
and
and go ahead.
and there was a when the passed, there was also the anti CBDC Surveillance Act that also got passed. So yeah, you're not allowed to create a CBDC, but I don't know how they defined it, and that's what matters is how do you define CBDC?
And if you know anybody who deals with law, you know how much they can hide in vague language. And so if there's not a strong level of understanding amongst the voting public, people get away with shit all the time, right? That's why it's so important to get educated on the stuff that seems boring. That's why we're trying to make this stuff more fun and trying to provide more characters, stories, drama to make these things more fun because they're going to decide how we live for like the next 100 years. There's a bill looking to ban it, the CBDCs. I think that's what
Mhm.
Keith just mentioned. Yeah, so it's
Yeah, and yeah, and Congress has been a lot more like they know, right? They're like, nah, that act did not do it. Like it didn't do
mm,
what we need them to do. And so I think there's more legislation that's been trying to come out around that as well.
totally. And JDM, I can definitely agree with this sentiment. Never listen to a politician. That's the issue because we also talk about how, and even politicians openly say how there's a shadow government that is that is really pulling the strings behind the scenes. So even someone who is the purest of heart, if they get in there, they typically change, right? And then we also have the additional issue of financial interests where there is so much, I don't even know the proper term for it, but where politicians basically use their access to information to benefit themselves with their investment decisions far earlier than it reaches the public, like Pelosi, I think it is, right? Where there's somebody made an app where they could just follow her trades, which is crazy. And apparently she's not even in the top 10 in terms of those kinds of performance, which is crazy, right? Like that should be an obvious no brainer. If you work in politics, you should not be able to invest. Like, I feel like that's so obvious. The conflict of interest there is off the charts.
Yeah, for sure. And I like the correction that you made to yourself there, JDM, to believe, because you do have to listen to them. Like they might
Great
tell you
call.
exactly what not to do or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you can get some good signals.
Great point. Yeah, and it does seem like there's some people in there that, are trying to make change, but it does seem like the system, even internally for them, is deliberately built in a way where things are very much on a need to know basis. And so it's difficult to have open dialogue when everything needs to be said in a skiff and there's so much red tape and even presidents can't be read into certain things that are within the US government. It's just insane. But yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in the US and probably in other democracies and republics as well, it's like I had a conversation with a family member about this recently. It's like the incentives are just they're just not all the way right because
No.
what happens is these people get in there, they get offered stuff, right? Let's be honest. And then their incentive becomes, well, I want to keep getting this stuff that I'm being offered. And if I'm not in the seat, then I'm not going to get offered this stuff. So then it turns into like, how can I create the biggest show to make sure that these people love me? Right.
Mhm.
And it just becomes this whole like I guess like self-reinforcing loop of them like pandering to the people and the people loving them and then them continuing to, just go back and forth with that. And it's not a great look.
Yeah, there's a reason like politics is a show, right? Like they are literally a reality TV show, and that's why some of the figures in there, they're not there for their ethics, their morals, even their thinking ability. They're there for the character that can be pushed for people to get behind with clips and with segments and headlines and social signals, right? Like
It's
all of these
crazy.
people are like and in Canada, we have a big issue here too, but much like you said, like, the incentives aren't in line, and that's a systemic issue that is so important to change because I wouldn't even wanna go into politics because the only way to really do well in a lot of cases is to do it like that, and it seems like it's almost impossible to make change unless you get along with whatever they're deciding to push. So it really does need to seem it seems like the system needs to be completely rebuilt, and I'm hopeful that blockchain could be more involved in a lot of these things to make things more transparent and inclusive. We've talked about this at length with where there is that technology that's out there where theoretically things could be a lot more open and also give us more say in it because it's kind of crazy how we're trusting people that don't know anything about, let's say, crypto to make decisions for us on crypto. Like that's crazy.
Yep, and that spans across every single
Everything.
thing because these people don't know anything about anything most of the time. You know what I
Yeah, well
mean? So
well, how can they? Most of them are more concerned with the play that they're doing, right? Which is
mhm.
really it's political theater. And so they're more concerned with how do I get more eyeballs? How do I piss off more people who are against me to rally the people who are for me rather than actually serving the people in many cases. Of course, there are exceptions to this. There's some politicians that I really like. There's this one guy in America who's like very pro UFO disclosure. He was just on Tucker Carlson. He's hilarious. He's from Tennessee. We need more people who are
Oh
real
wow,
people in there.
is
We
it Bill
need
Haggerty?
this guy has
I don't know.
glasses. Does Bill have glasses? Um, but we need more people in there. No, it's not Bill. Let me find him. We need more people in there who are actually just real people. And when I watch this shit, I can say like this guy's a real guy, you know? But he's hilarious. And his story on Tucker, I recommend reading that. Tim Burchett.
Okay,
Is his name.
gotcha.
And he was recently on Tucker's show, and he just has a real story. And maybe it's perfectly executed by the deep state, but in terms of just reading it, I didn't get that, or watching it, I didn't get that vibe. And he had some good stories there. He's very open and trying to be honest, and it seems like that at least. And he's very public about how discombobulated the entire system really is and how difficult making change happen is.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And back to this whole blockchain idea, the thing that's really wild, I think maybe Mark Andreessen was talking about this one day, but like we could imagine a world, right, where we have these like AI that actually help to make all of these decisions and that become the politicians of the future.
Yeah, I
And the
know.
blockchain would make that a lot more possible. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to if done well, it could make things so much better, but you're putting so much trust into people who have consistently shown they can't be trusted, right? And that's what creates this entire problem is how do you change the system where that is no longer a thing? I'm gonna go back to my dude here, Charles. Like he talks about the stuff at length on his channel and very like deep interweaving, very boring content. But if you can sit through it, it's crazy to think about the underlying problems because we all headline skim, especially if you're not a deep knowledge matter expert or subject matter expert. Like we all look to signals, right? But there's so many deeper interweaving things that we're not privy to that make the problem a lot more complex than it seems to us on the outside. So there's definitely a lot to think about. Are there any of these comments that you want to chop it up on, Keith?
I think we could talk a little bit about RD's statement. Do you think the current manipulation of crypto markets has anything to do with them clearing the market so the US can create a BTC reserve?
There's a
Ooh,
lot of people who feel stuff like that, and I would say undoubtedly the markets have been manipulated. Who's executing it all? Hard to say. You've talked a lot before, Keith, about, Max Payne theory, is that what it's called? And
yeah,
so
man.
that's playing a role because everyone's so heavy on leverage, man. And so as long as that continues to happen, you're gonna keep getting wiped out. It's too profitable.
Yeah, lots of leverage in the system. It continues to build up even right after these events. It just continues to build back up again. And then on top of that, I think we're starting to get like, I'm seeing a lot of people who are new coming into the game. And you've got some people who are going to start throwing some real money at this stuff coming into the
Totally.
game because the laws are passing. So you got the big dogs, the people that have built up their nest egg, and they're coming into the game. And I'm gonna be honest, like I bet you that just took a lot. They were like, I ain't playing this game. I don't like this game.
True. Yeah.
So it's gonna, yeah. So
I do think so many people are gonna enter this space though, because as they create more and more vehicles to enter with less friction and their money guy can
yeah.
sell them products that gives them exposure to this, I just think there's going to be a cascade of things where things are gonna move so fast. Go ahead, you got something to say?
Well, because this was the other thing that I was talking to some of my students about is like technically in the ETFs, you wouldn't have seen this level of volatility. Uh, primarily because they don't trade 24/7. So the market had closed by the time that was happening.
Very good
Um,
point.
Yeah, and so and but also because there's not leverage built up on those products, so you don't get those same types of liquidation events in the ETF itself.
Totally.
So yeah, that's when that
Yeah,
matters.
and I will say that too, that there's so many people who are gonna be hearing about this from more and more sources that they trust, and there's also a massive sector of wealth out there from people who have just never touched this space that are going to at least put a percentage of their wealth. Like, I think about my dad all the time who purely trusts his money guy, and whenever I talk to him about crypto over the years, he'd always be like, that's a scam," because my dad thinks everything's a scam. And so, until his money guy says it's a good idea, he wasn't gonna listen to me saying it was a good idea, but as soon as that guy says, I think you should at least put 5% towards it, he's just going to blindly say yes. And then when that happens and the 5% makes his net worth go up a massive amount, you don't think he's going to brag about that on the dock? And then everybody else is going to go call their money guy to do the exact same thing. Like, I just think it can move very quickly from word of mouth. And then for more of like the retail stuff, social media will be massive for that.
Yeah, and so Coinbase will just be perpetually down during those times. So be prepared for that.
Be very prepared for that. Yeah, it's absolutely. But I think now what I would say, and we can go any which way after this that you want, but now is the point in time where things haven't gone crazy yet, and they very much may. I'm not going to say that they will or they won't. I personally think that they will, but I'm an idiot. For this though, it's the time where go back and look at other cycles and look at how much stuff moved, how big it moved, and how a few $100 or a few $1,000 in the right thing would have completely changed your life, right? Like the power is in the understanding and having the bravery to believe what you research and understand and take a shot.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I always try to preach around, like I did a video, it was called Is it too late to buy Bitcoin or whatever, something like that. And the major thing here is like there's an asymmetric opportunity where if this becomes right like the thing and like this is the future of money, then for you to literally sit there and just say, "Oh, I don't like it. I'm not going to participate."
Crazy.
That could be
It's absurd.
generationally
Bro,
impoverishing your entire, posterity.
man, I try to tell my friends about this stuff, and everyone always thinks that everyone else is just full of shit, which I get to a degree, and some natural skepticism is a good idea. But I'm literally like good friends with these people, and I know this shit better than 99% of the world. And I'm like, guys, pay attention. And they're all just like, right? And then as soon as it's over, they're gonna be like texting me all this crap. Like, if you take stuff seriously, you're here, so you guys are already taking this stuff seriously. And just for someone like, let's say you have a gambling addiction. Okay, if you want to make your gambling addiction like a higher chance of winning, take what you were gambling, do some research, and put it into stocks or crypto, where we actually have a better chance of winning, especially with crypto, with where we are. None of this is financial advice. I will never give financial advice, but I'd be willing to bet that you could get a lot higher chances of winning at far higher multiples if you were to do research, make your own decisions, and put that into crypto rather than gambling. And a lot of people are spending money they don't even think about. They might even put, like, let's say 100 or like $500 a month if you're comfortable into gambling, which you're going to burn that money. You're lighting it on fire. Where the best case scenario, you're turning that 500 into, let's say, like 4 or 5K tops. With crypto, if you were to hit big on something that you put $500 in, that could change your entire life. Like, that's actually what's at stake here. If you take the time to figure this stuff out and don't just headline skim or go on Twitter and go into a meme coin called like tits and ass, and like do some research and actually find some stuff. You know what I mean? Like, people will go put their money in something dumb because they've seen something like fart coin go crazy, which we're going to actually, that's teasing a future episode. We're going to talk about why meme coins are such a big deal, the psychology of meme coins, and also the growth apparatus that is there from the mechanism of alignment. And so we'll talk about all that, but like, lock in, people, is what I'm trying to say, and a very long way of saying that.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, let's say you're right. Let's say that this is all a big scam. It's like,
I call that natural selection. I love that so much.
yeah, I mean, it's a crazy time because it's like, it's tough, dude. Because I also don't completely convince myself that like this has to be the way, right? But that's also what I preach is like, to be like 100% this is the truth, what's going to happen. It's like, well, we don't really necessarily know. Maybe this is a big rug pull that's happening in real time, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have exposure to the asset class. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
And what are the alternatives, right? Even if it is a rug pull, much like you said, I think you coined it perfectly. It's an asymmetric bet, where basically, if it goes your way, you're winning so exponentially. So think about this: if you're a sports gambler, crypto with the research behind it is like a massive 12-leg parlay, but you actually have a chance of hitting it. It's not like a really good one, but it's way more statistically likely than the bets that you're putting out like a DGen every weekend. I'm very confident if you go do the time, you will find that. And you don't need to be right more than once if you're
Right.
playing in something this high leverage, right? Like, some of my biggest wins that changed my entire life was because I was right on like one or two things. I think people don't get in this because they're like, oh, I might be burning some money. It's like, dude, you burn money on fast food, you burn money on all this horrible stuff. This is something that actually has an asymmetric opportunity for you to make way more if you hit. Obviously, most people won't, but if you do.
Yeah. And we see JDM put out a cool little bit of information that he had from his life. And
Oh, yeah. Gambling is the biggest scam. Gambling is actually one of the biggest epidemics on the planet right now. The next one of the future apps that I'm going to build is try to provide a mechanism for people to try to reduce their gambling or stop gambling altogether, because
yes.
we've been trying to do that for a while. We're just trying to find someone to partner with who can understand the psychology of it, because I could make some BS app that doesn't really work and still make a ton of money, but I want to make it work. So we're just trying to
Yeah.
find the partner who understands the psychology of it and what you can swap, like, in terms of a software functionality. So that's something that's there. So total shot in the dark. But if you guys know any sort of someone who's a specialist in the psychology of gambling, please get in contact with me. We have an app we want to build, and we have a loose direction for it, but we want to know the efficacy behind what we're making.
Ben coming through with the apps. That's a big one. That would be
Yes,
massive.
that'd be huge. Yeah, and also, because it's direct, and for a little business lesson here, is that if you want to make money, you got to make it obvious for people that it will either make them money or save them money. If you do that, the sale becomes a no-brainer. And the problems that you decide to solve will dictate your day-to-day life, right? So I have a bunch of different software products, and I cannot tell you how different the experiences are dealing with the customers based on the problems that we're solving, right? So you got to reverse engineer the outcome that you want. And so that comes down to everything. And a lot of people haven't thought through enough of what the future would look like if they were successful, right? A lot of times they get blinded by an opportunity and they just think like, oh, this could lead to this much money. And oftentimes people are right, but they don't think about everything attached to that much money. So I have one app that's definitely more of like a nice to have, and it's more like, how can I explain this? It basically, the problem that you're solving and how you're solving it's going to dictate the kind of customer that it brings to you, and then that's going to dictate your day-to-day life. Is basically what I'm trying to say. And a lot of people really don't think about that at all, and they ended up like, for one case in point, is that I have a software product that I used to partner with some of my really good friends who ran a very complex software product. I have a way simpler product in a very similar line of business, and we make less than them for sure, but with way less work and way less overhead because we went a lot more concentrated where there was way less competition. And so I just think holistically thinking through things is definitely a good idea.
Love it, man. And to take it to the woo woo level, it's
Hit me
like
with it.
it's always just about like designing your life with the end state in mind, right? So before you launch that product, before you launch that offer, like you're saying, really think about what that fulfillment of that is going to look like and
Hmm.
whether or not that's a life that you actually want to lead. Because what happens in between there is that you'll lose motivation before you even get there, anyways, right?
Totally.
And you'll self sabotage yourself on the way because you'll be like, I actually don't want that outcome. And you'll find a way to mess it up.
100%. I'm so glad you said that. And so few people have ever clearly outlined what their perfect life would look like. And then they wonder why they don't get there. You can't put no destination into Google Maps and end up where you wanna go, like, that just doesn't work like that, and so I think there's so much value in outlining it, and I honestly think when you outline your dream life, it should be health, wealth, relationships, all this stuff, exactly what this looks like, where are you putting your time towards, what makes you passionate, all this stuff, and be very, like, almost unrealistic, because I think the only thing that's unrealistic is if you're unwilling to do the things that you want to acquire, but when you outline what it is that you want to acquire, there's a destination there. And now the roadmap can actually be outlined where you can then make a conscious decision. Am I actually willing to do this to get what I want? And so when you're writing it out, deciding where you want to go, the feeling states that you would feel when you're there is also really important to capture. Like, what would this mean if you actually achieved that? And how much would that impact your life? Is it really worth it? And if you can truly feel it, the chances of you getting there are way more likely. And in almost everything I've ever done in my entire life, the 80/20 principle is so universally true, where 80% of your impact comes from 20% of your output, or 80% of your pain comes from 20% of the inputs or the people or customers. And so many businesses, they fail because they don't understand the problem well enough to know what actually matters. Let's use the case in point of my YouTube agency, for example. Like, I focus so much on the title and the thumbnail and the concept of a video because I can tell you unequivocally that although so much work goes into actually making the YouTube content, if you don't get that part right, none of it else matters. Like, literally none of it matters. But a lot of people will obsess over the irrelevant things because they don't understand the problem well enough. So outline clearly what would it feel like if you got there, and try to outline the different 80/20s that are present everywhere.
Yep. And for people who are here as crypto investors, right? One of the ways that you can kind of look at this is in investing in general, like you always want to make sure that you actually figure out what it is that you're investing for, right? And why it is that you're doing what you're doing and what that actual end goal is.
Mhm.
What happens is along the way, you pretty much the same thing we were just talking about, where like you can lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. And in events like what happened on Friday, you get shaken out and you're like, wait a minute, like I'm not willing to go through that level of volatility or fear to be able to get to that end goal, because you're only feeling that current state of like fear. Whereas if you could zoom back out again and say, wait, well, what was that feeling that I was trying to get toward through this investing journey in general? And when you can snap back into that or just stay in that state, you can weather a lot of this stuff a lot more. I had someone in my community, they were like, they asked like, how did everyone do through this? And I was like, oh, I did pretty good. I was fine. And then he was like, uh, yeah, no, I was unfazed. Like this was awesome. I saw this as an incredible opportunity. And like it's all about the framing of your mind around events in regards to your end state. Because if your end state is, I want to own more Bitcoin, right? I want to own enough Bitcoin to be able to do this and that or whatever that makes me happy. Then guess what? Then you would have naturally seen lower prices of Bitcoin as an opportunity and in no other way. So just wanted to bring it
Totally,
back
dude.
there.
If you had clearly done this exercise where you outlined the exact person that you wanted to be, it also dictates how you should react and respond to every bit of thing that's thrown at you, right? Because in this exact scenario where Keith's talking about how the market was down, if you were prepared, you had thought through this, you had done things in accordance with where you're trying to end up, the only way you would see this would be positively because you're like, cool, I get closer to the thing that I want. This is just part of the game. And you don't really become phased. A lot of people don't get to where they want to go because they haven't outlined this and they haven't done the, I don't even like the word work, but they haven't done the time under tension of just feeling what this would feel like to really realize who they want to become and what that person would think like. I always ask myself whenever I find myself getting a little heated about something, I stop and I say, would dream me even give a shit about this? Would this even be something that'd be on their radar? Would they even care? Would they stop? Would they talk about it to somebody else? Whatever you assign attention to or time to, you're assigning importance towards subconsciously. So be very careful about what you do and how you respond to things, because you can't expect to be some billionaire trader if that's your goal and freak out when the market dips. The only reason you can become a billionaire is because there is fluctuation in the market.
Absolutely. It's a great example there. And when you really step into that seat of the investor who's trying to acquire assets, right? You realize that volatility is your best friend.
Completely. Yes, it's the only reason there's an opportunity. And that's why, although I got burned last cycle in terms of dollars and cents, I really didn't care, because I realized that to change my life the way that I wanted to is probably going to take at least one or two more cycles. So I started buying stuff when nobody wanted it. And the saying from Warren Buffett gets repeated so frequently, but still not enough: be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. Far easier said than done. But those that become otherworldly successful, they're able to get into a state to anchor themselves to actually see that opportunity when everyone else is freaking out and is scared.
100%. I love the idea from
This guy lifts.
Bigfoot Stepper as well to say, write it down, write stuff down, guys. It actually completely rewires your brain. Like your brain is a biological instrument. You have to use it, and writing things down actually completely changes the chemistry of your brain.
Totally.
So yeah, yeah,
It's also a slower practice that allows you to really connect with it more. It's a lot like reading a book. That's why you can have such more of a vivid experience from a book than even say a movie, because you're dictating that. And so your feelings and your imagination can get shaped and shape the narrative as well. So that kind of happens with your own life when you take the time to write this down. Personally, I type things rather than write them. I still think writing is better. My handwriting is just horrendous. I wouldn't be able to read it if I wrote it. So I type things out, but that's just because I didn't listen to all my teachers growing up who gave me like 4,000 different holders of pencils. And I hold my pen really messed up.
are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, but
Gotcha.
I hold this thing like crazy. I've had every teacher I've ever had who tried to make it their mission to make me write better, and they all failed. It's totally my fault. They did their best. I was just like, "No, it does the trick. I don't need it. It's fine." So yeah, definitely write it out. Put time towards it. If you're like me and you can't read your own handwriting, maybe you want to type it out, but put the feeling there.
100%. And then we had a Ken. I thought that was pretty funny there with the time
T-
of detention.
Time under tension. This guy lifts. Yeah, I definitely have lifted before. Yeah, I like lifting. Lifting's a lot of fun. And I played football growing up, so that was a big part of that too. But what else do you want to talk about today? Actually, first, one thing before we go into open it up to the floor is I want to give Keith a big shout out for that plaque over his left shoulder there, or right
Ooh,
shoulder, where he reached that 100K milestone. We now both have a plaque, bro. So I
let's
got mine
go.
over there. Keith's got his right there,
Let's
and
go.
we're soon gonna have one for this show too. But I wanted to give you a big shout out there.
Thanks, man. Thanks. It's I wish I had some speech of like how long and hard it was to get here, but honestly, it's been a wild jump in subscribers, and definitely grateful to everybody that's been around for this. And we'll definitely continue to uh, produce more and get better at everything we're doing. So definitely in the comments, guys, come around, let us know what we're doing and how we can do it better. And yeah, we'll definitely get this channel up there pretty soon too.
Yeah, totally. And with your channel, I don't think you give yourself enough credit in terms of, yes, it happened quickly, but it only happened quickly because of the previous decade of work.
Mhm,
Right?
mhm.
Yes, you may have not made that many videos, but you did so much more work than the people who have made 10 times the amount of videos, right? So, it's all relative, and I think that you deserve it completely, and the market dictates what the market dictates. That's why I am a free market capitalist when it can actually function the way that it should. And I think YouTube is pretty close to that, besides when things get censored. So good to you, and congratulations. And
Thanks,
Sam
man.
said, of course, "Yo, Ben, how you say that to an audience of YouTube viewers? We ain't reading ish." I don't know what that means.
I think because you were talking about reading,
A book?
like reading, yeah, like how
Yeah.
writing is like reading, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that depends on what you're looking for and what you're looking to acquire. I think that The time it takes to read a book is also an investment that definitely creates more importance to what you're consuming. But if you prefer podcasts, then that's totally fine too. I just think it's worth experimenting with different formats of consumption for sure. So, Sam, I definitely recommend reading books though. Like, look, we got books all over the place. I owe a lot of my success to those. And that smaller bookcase over there, you can't see. Now you can see. So, and Keith's famous for all of his books behind there. So it's definitely worth reading.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no better format, and I still can't get into the audiobook thing. People keep telling me to do it. I'll try it, but even for me, it's like I gotta have the physical book in my hand. I take my notes in the margin and I underline my stuff and I look up my definitions and that's just kind
See,
of how I do it.
I'm not a big notes guy. I'm more of like a psycho person where I'll talk to myself. So what I'll
Fair.
do is instead of taking a note, I'll just pause it and I'll have a conversation where I challenge my own thoughts and beliefs. I'm sure the people around Toronto think I'm insane. Luckily, I have headphones in, so they think I'm talking to someone, but I'm really, but I'm really just talking to myself.
There's actually
Um,
a guy who does something like where he walks around Toronto and he has like his headphones in, but he's like screaming out the lyrics to songs. I don't know if you've seen that, but that just reminded me of
I've seen a bunch of
that.
people do that just in walking around. So it could be one of those guys who makes videos about it. But JDM says, Ben, are you in software? Yes, I am in software. I run a few software companies. I'm not an engineer myself. I have basic coding abilities, but I more so manage and lead a team of engineers to build products based on gaps that I find in the marketplace.
What what kind of like languages have you experimented with in the past?
All over the place out of depending on the problem. Like recently we've one of our big bets has been a game. And so that was built in with Unity, which is
Okay.
basically a lot more tailored towards games. But most of the apps that you're gonna build for like web or mobile, they're using the same, like almost everyone's using the same stuff at this point. And a lot of the vibe coding tools are really centered around that too. So even when I interview different teams and we work with different people, the discussion of what languages to approach things with is like less and less of a conversation over time. Everything
Mhm.
seems like it's blurring together because the tools also can alleviate the problems of if you chose something else, like someone can still work with it because they can basically translate what this would have meant in the language they're native in to something else. So that's definitely interesting.
Very cool.
Sam says audio headphones when I sleep. I can't talk about that poorly because I sleep with like blue light blocker glasses on, like I'm crazy. So I watch my phone while I'm in bed. Horrible habit, terrible sleep hygiene. But I love watching podcasts and lectures while I'm about to go to bed. So I do have the headphones there, so I can't talk about that.
Yeah, I've been really bad about this lately. Like I definitely keep my phone very close to me before I go to bed. I
Yeah,
wish I could get away from that, but
yeah,
it's
definitely
hard.
a bad habit, but I'm in a season right now where I'm trying to consume as much as I possibly can because I do feel like we're on the frontier of multiple fronts of massive change.
True.
And so maybe I'm being so dramatic and hyperbolic with it, but I do feel like time is of the essence to acquire as much information as humanly possible. And I take that to the extreme, maybe too literally, but I'm constantly consuming stuff that I feel can benefit me. And the more that you do that, you start to see connections in everything and you see opportunities others don't. And I also find a massive opportunity from learning things across a wide spectrum of subjects is the real gift is the degree of empathy you create because most people can really only create products or service themselves or people just like them. Most of my most successful businesses, I wouldn't even buy the product. But
Mm,
I had a strong enough sense of empathy to understand people would. I really don't buy much shit. So like that's ironically like I'm really not a big consumer of stuff. Like I wear a basketball jersey and like the same shorts every day of the week. I'm not like bougie in that stuff, but I love thinking about what makes people tick. Like even last night I was out for dinner and my girlfriend was talking about how this one jewelry store she really likes and I like, grilled her on it for like 30 minutes in terms of why she liked it because that stuff I find so interesting in terms of what motivates people. But
mm,
yeah, it's
mm.
also fun to me.
Very cool. Jermaine left us a comment.
We appreciate you, Jermaine. Jermaine is a woman, by the way. I screwed that up, so I want to apologize publicly for last time for assuming your gender. I appreciate you coming back, and you are an absolute legend. We appreciate having you here.
Yeah. Always grateful for you coming through.
Yes,
Any
someone tap in on the front end. You're right. The market responded. I think he's referring to development.
Oh. Oh, he is because he's a developer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how things have changed, and it's definitely a continuingly emerging field, and I would say as someone who saw the opportunity, and I was lucky that when I when I started my marketing agency, the people who had the most money were software companies, and so I naturally tailored my services around helping them out, and that allowed me to see the mistakes that they were making. And a lot of my clients, I gave them suggestions for stuff all the time, and they just didn't take them. And I was like, but that really helped me to develop what mattered versus what didn't, because when I was making the content for these people, I was basically the de facto customer service agent for Instagram and like other software tools for a very long time. So my level of understanding of one is of like design, what needs to be done, and also people's general aptitude towards technology gave us such an advantage to make decisions in real time.
Yeah, I'm very far removed.
Yeah, but that's fine. Like, that's the point, right? Is finding where do you want to be an expert in, right? Like that's also why this show makes so much sense, because on the meme side and the pop culture stuff and psychology, like I'm an absolute autistic nerd, right? And then with you, it's more of the markets, like the interweavings of the financial systems, the tech behind that. Like I think that's also why I so badly wanted to do this show with you, because I feel like there's complementary there. And there's also a lesson in that, is that own what you're good at and what you like. Whatever you're obsessed with, if you become really, really obsessed with that over a long enough period of time, you're going to become really valuable.
Yeah. I feel like as an entrepreneur and founder in today, like I do feel at a disadvantage. I think we talked about some of this kind of stuff in the past. Maybe not. Maybe it was like my first million or some guys that I was hearing talk about this, where it's um, like people are going to be able to become. We've talked about this, like tech. If you're tech enabled, right? Like you understand AI enough, you're gonna be able to take over, like 50% of someone's company just for having that skill set alone.
Totally. Yeah.
Because if I have to lay down and say like, oh, I don't get tech, which I'm not, by the way, but if I did have to do that,
Yeah.
then it'd be like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to give you 50% of my company
Yeah, exactly.
to do simple stuff. By the way, you know what I mean?
That's a really important point that you mentioned, and one that's worth doubling down on. So, the business landscape, if you're here and you're entrepreneurial, I would also really want you to broaden the scope of the problems that you can now take on, because the moats of yesterday in terms of how much labor you needed, how many connections you needed, et cetera, all of those are crumbling down. And because humans are humans and they operate from a place of scarcity, within these massive companies, there is a power struggle to maintain jobs. They're forming unions. They're creating all of this red tape that's going to make being adaptable increasingly difficult and expensive for these massive companies. That is amazing for you and your team of 5 people that can now literally go take on billion-dollar giants because of these exact things I'm describing. And that's not hyperbole whatsoever. The next company that I'm building is what I think a billion-dollar opportunity, and we'll be able to achieve it with a team that is legitimately 1/100th of what would have been required like 5 or 10 years ago. So it's insane the compounding nature that this can have if you do what Keith is saying and you become aware of it. And also, this was a big lesson for me too, is that when I was hiring engineers, at first, like understanding the problem from a far enough out point of view is also really valuable, because I wasn't a native engineer. I didn't have the biases that engineers had, right? So when AI came out, they were actually very anti AI, because think about this logically. They were like gods in the workforce before, right? They're like, you can
True.
build shit. And so they got compensated for it and they felt better than everyone else. Software engineers were the most entitled people for over the past like decade or two, where they would talk down on me all the time as the marketing guy. Like that just happened, right? And so because of that, they couldn't even see their flaws in their approach to the tools. And so I listened to engineers for a while. I was hiring engineers, and then I realized it hit me, and I was like, wait, if anything, if I believe these tools are transformative, why would I try to work with teams and people who are bragging that they don't use the tools? And why wouldn't I find the guy who understands the problem enough to realize that bragging about being the best with the tools is the biggest flex you could have? And that totally changed my recruitment process. And I found my best engineer from that exact thinking model. Like he is a beast. He is cracked. And it's because he was bragging about how good he was with these tools. So he's able to do what would have cost me like before a team of engineers with mostly just him.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it makes sense, man. I mean, the people that still sit in that seat, I think now too, are people in cybersecurity. Yeah, they're like a whole different level of like the tech stack as far as like you really need to have them still. And not only that, but they also are also probably the most like intelligent of
Yeah,
the like developers and tech people.
totally.
So it's really
Yeah,
cool to
and developers are also super smart and talented too. It's just the nature of a market, right? When you get
yeah.
treated that way, it changes your psychology. The same thing is happening right now with UGC creators. There are people who really aren't that good getting inundated with brands and software companies who are launching up these startups using these tools that we're talking about. And these creators are getting very, very entitled at this point in time. And I do think that's going to come to an end pretty quickly as these platforms change. So it's like anything, right? Markets, they come and they go, and so it's very important to not get too cocky at any point. Any time in history where I've been like, "Oh, I'm set," or "I'm the man," life always has a way of humbling you. So practice humbling yourself so that you don't have to pay the price of the world and the market doing it for you.
Mm, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Um, I have a book behind me. It's by a guy named Tillman Fertitta, I think name. I think that's how you say it. Owner of the Houston Rockets, or at least previous owner of the Houston Rockets, founder of Landry's, which is a big hospitality group. And he has a book called Shut Up and Listen. In that book, he says, there's a paddle for everyone's behind. And it's kind of along the lines of what you're saying there around like, there's always something that's going to come and knock you out of the game.
Totally.
So if you're not continuously like, not in a state of panic, but in a state of constant worry of like,
Adaptability.
yeah, yeah, and moving with things as they continue to change and occur, you eventually will have that paddle come for your behind.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt, that's the only guarantee. I was actually walking to dinner last night, and this mom was giving her kid some great life advice. She was like, we walked past right at the time, and she said, "The only constant is in life is change. Always be ready for it." And I was like, "That's some great advice, mom." So, yeah, there's definitely golden nuggets there. It's really, really true that the more adaptable that you are, especially with when the rate of change increases, adaptability becomes the strongest skill set there is. And a lot of that actually comes from belief, right? Where if you think something's gonna be hard to learn, it's always gonna be way more difficult to learn. So getting through that first bit and changing your relationship to learning, as I spilled the coffee all over me, is gonna be really important to increasing how quickly you can acquire new skills. But Keith, I'd love to open up the floor up to you or anybody else to see if they want us to talk about anything in particular. Um, yeah, do your thing, chat
Yeah,
or
what's
Keith.
up, chat? What's up, chat?
Don't be
Let me
shy.
see. Akin said, studies have shown that experienced developers are actually slowed down when they use AI.
Yeah, and developers still very much matter too. I will say that. In terms of slowed down, I would really love to see that study because that's not the experience that I've had, but I would love to see that study. I think it can definitely atrophy their ability to solve their own problems. So if that's what they mean over a longer time horizon, I could totally believe that. But in terms of just like getting stuff done, like little stuff that used to be very tedious, has definitely expedited. Um, Ben, man, that's the truth. Um, I don't know. I said a lot of BS back there, a lot of stuff. So I don't know which one you're talking about, but I appreciate whatever one it was. I appreciate you tremendously. And yeah, if you guys have any topics that you want us to talk on right now, or feel free to suggest future topics of conversation for other episodes. Right now, what do we have planned, Keith? We've got the meme coins episode. What else
We'll
do we
talk
have?
memes. We'll talk memes. I don't know, man. We'll have to be thoughtful about that, I guess,
No,
moving
dude, that's a
forward.
that's a quote developers say is
Oh, he's saying that's what they say.
oh, got it.
Okay, okay. So they're like, nah, dude, like studies show experienced developers actually
Of
slow
course, they're
down
gonna
when they
say
use
that. That's
it. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
that's the same thinking models for why I stopped listening to them saying, "Oh, avoid anybody who uses AI." It's the same sort of thing. You're always gonna act from a point that makes your skill set most valuable, you the most valuable. Yeah, we're out of sync. It definitely is. There's a delay there, but
Yeah.
yeah. If y'all have anything you want to chop it up on, or Keith, did anything come to mind?
Nothing on the top of my mind at the moment. I'm sure there'll be something that happens like as soon as we get off stream that like changes the whole global financial situation, but that's the
Totally.
world we live in right now.
Totally, totally. Well, as if you're still here and you haven't hit the subscribe button, let's remedy that problem right now. The more that we're able to grow this show, the more we're going to be able to get on amazing guests that we talk about and we tease. And we've got a list of people we want to reach out to. We're just trying to build the foundation for where they're actually going to say yes. Because one of the hardest parts with growing a podcast is getting people to actually come and creating a situation that is too valuable not to show up, which is why we made it live, which is why we're working every day to grow this thing. So if you can help us out, and help us help you out by clicking the subscribe button and hitting the bell button and sharing this with someone you think may like it. All that stuff goes such a long way because all of these indicators of intent and interest are signals of being like enjoying the content in the eyes of YouTube. And basically, what it does is it creates a deeper concentration of the viewer profile for who this is for. So when you guys give us these different means of engagement, you're helping YouTube show our content to more people who have similar interests to you, which is also going to help us enhance the community too.
Absolutely. And it's just awesome to do this with you guys. So I'm forever grateful to the people that are here in the early days. I think this is really cool.
Yeah, and that's a great idea here too, RD saying, can you do a show going through the regulation that's being passed? I think that's a really good idea. We should actually do that completely, where we should
Yep.
go through the different things and dissect what's being said, the language that's being used, what that could mean. That's a fantastic idea, RD. We'll do that. When do you think it's a good time for that, Keith? Has there been much forward movement with that?
I mean, we could definitely go back through the Genius Act and then look forward to what's been going, the contention areas in the Clarity Act. I think we could
Yeah,
do that. That
cool.
next
Yeah,
week.
I'll let Keith decide when's a good time to do that, and then we'll definitely make that episode happen. That's a very good idea, RD. I appreciate you for that. Well, then, if no one else has anything else they want to chop it up on, seems like a natural place to wrap it up, Keith.
Um, I think it is. I think it is.
Okay.
And like RD said, hit that like button.
Always do that. Make that the habit. When you come into memes and markets, you smash the like button. It's just what we do here. All right. But I'll say this. I'll say I appreciate you all for showing up, Keith. As always, thanks for having an awesome conversation. Congrats on that plaque behind you. It looks good on you, and you deserved it. And I appreciate all of you guys for showing up as well.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Jamin. This has been a great listen. Thanks for that. And looking forward to Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern. We will be there.
We'll be there. You better be there too. Make sure to hit the little bell button so you actually get notified. And we will see all of y'all on Tuesday.
Peace.
See you guys. Bye bye.